Deion Sanders and the Colorado Buffaloes are off to a hot start in the transfer portal, but what do they got to do next to finish it off?
Locked On presents The Portal, the daily podcast covering college football recruiting and everything NIL. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome back into the Portal Podcast, where you get your daily recruiting, NIL, and transfer portal news. I am your host, Brian Smith, longtime college football writer and recruiting analyst. Thank you for making the Portal Podcast your first listen each and every day. Today's show is brought to you by our friends at Game Time. Right now, you can download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Today's show is going to be all about the Colorado Buffaloes, what Deion Sanders and the rest of that roster have and what they need. Right now, they're sitting pretty with what they've got so far. Recently talked about Teon Parks and a few other players that Colorado got, but they lost some guys. Where did the Buffaloes have to go at which positions? How many? To help me figure all of that out, none other than Kevin Borba from Locked On Buffs. Welcome back onto the show, Kevin. How are you, sir?
Good. Thank you for having me. Hope you all had a great Easter.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. This is one of the most perplexing programs to follow in college football. You follow it closer than anybody. I just want to make an opening statement here. I think Colorado is trending towards the best team in the Big 12 for this next year if they make a few key plays here. Now, nothing's perfect. You're going to lose guys too. We'll talk about one in particular, an offensive lineman they lost that didn't make me very happy, but they've done well so far.
Yeah.
Do you think that this is the pace you expected? Like, they've hit on a few guys. Some of the, I love the under the radar stuff too.
Yeah.
We're going to get it like FCS kids, etc. Man, I would love to have a sit down with their back office and just like what's going on. What's your take overall so far on what the Buffaloes have done?
I think they have a really good scouting and sort of knack for finding these guys, right? You're looking at, and we talked off air about him specifically, Xavier Hill, the Memphis interior offensive.
Oh, man, he's good.
Everyone wanted him, right? And I think it's the transfer portal is kind of like recruiting, and you know this as well as anyone. It takes a couple offers for other programs to be like, oh, Texas offered this guy,
exactly.
So we should be in on this guy. Or Ohio State looked at this guy, we should look at him, right? And so I think Colorado is finding those guys before everyone else is. And then for some of these guys, Colorado just has a great selling pitch, right? I think of the position coaches, 7 of the 9 played or coached in the NFL. And so that's a big selling point for them, right? Not a lot of programs can be like, hey, Warren Sapp over there, Hall of Fame. Hey, Coach Prime over there, Hall of Fame. Hey, our defense coordinator, Robert Livingston, spent a decade as an NFL coach, right? So like they have so many things going for them in the sales pitch. I think it makes up for their, I won't say lack of NIL, but they're not big spenders, right? They're not going to be throwing $5 million at Nico for obviously no one is, but they're not going to be throwing millions at people. So I think they've done a really good job of finding these guys. And I think you asked me what's next for them. I think Coach Prime sort of hinted at it after the spring game. I'm expecting about 12 to 15 more transfers to join the fray here. I think they've already landed 4 in the spring window, and I'm expecting probably 9 to 12 more, honestly.
That's pretty much what I would expect, but it also depends on who leaves, and we'll get to that. But let's start off with the success that Deion and his crew have had. First off, I'm very excited because obviously Deion played corner, so this is his bag. But Teon Parks is from Illinois State, not exactly the beacon of college football, but I went into his numbers, and like this is a kid that blossomed last year. He has some opportunity. He's long.
Yeah.
You talked about it. They do a great job with scouting. Is corner a concern? I mean, you lost Travis, but that aside, like, did they lose anybody else besides Travis Hunter?
They have depth issues, we'll call it depth issues at corner, right? They were just very set with who they had last year. They had Travis, DJ McKinney, who they got from Oklahoma State last year, and then Preston Hodge was kind of a gem for them. They got him from Liberty, and then RJ Johnson from Houston is also expected to have a role. All those guys were from last year. But when you lose Travis Hunter and you have those 3 or 4 guys, it's like, okay, who's after them, right? Because they have no – and some people saw this in the spring game. As soon as we saw the 2s come in, it was like, okay, there's a little bit of an issue here at corner, right? So I think Teon Parks, and this has been another thing that I think Colorado's done really well at. They're not only landing transfers, but they're landing guys with multiple years of eligibility. Like Teon Parks, I believe, will be a junior next year, right? So, or redshirt sophomore. I don't think he played a lot his freshman year. So he's going to be a guy that they can have for multiple years. So if he's not, say, the starting corner on the boundary next year, maybe he rotates in, he's part of the rotation, and then the following year, it's his time to shine, right? So I think they're doing really well at finding guys who could be not just one-year rentals, and I think he's a prime example of that.
That is huge. That is a trend in college football. There's nothing wrong with the guy that's just obviously good, got one more year, Xavier Hill.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're going to build a program and do it primarily through the portal, you got to get guys with sophomore and junior eligibility, or else you're just never going to get out of your own way, have no development. Right. With that in mind, they also got another guy. This is somebody you and I were talking about before the show. This is bizarre. Sincere Brown did nothing at USF.
Right.
Goes to Campbell and kills it.
Mm-hmm.
6'4", 6'5".
Yeah.
He looks the part. Yeah. His film that I watched about 3-4 clips, and I'm like, okay, the light has gone on. And I know he wasn't playing against Bama and Miami and Ohio State, etc. But certain physical movements for a long, tall guy cannot be dismissed.
Yeah.
Again, as you noted, Kevin, Colorado found a guy that a lot of other people had passed on, and he kind of blossomed. What do you expect? Like, is Colorado in a spot of, again, they lost Travis. That's a lot. And they lost some other guys. How many receivers do they need? Is he going to be their go-to guy? What's the situation with Sincere Brown?
Yeah, I think they needed, honestly, a couple more as well. During the spring game, we saw Joseph Williams, who transferred in from Tulsa. He was like the star of the show. And then everyone else was kind of just there, right? There's Terrell Timmons, who transferred in from NC State last year, kind of did all right, has just been lost in the mix. They have Draylon and Omarion Miller. I expect both of them to be pretty good, but at the same time, I'll give you sort of the breakdown of what they lost, right? They lost Travis Hunter, who's top 5 pick. They lost LeJontay Wester, who prior to coming to Colorado had over 100 catches in a season at FAU, comes to Colorado to be a role player, and I think he was probably, outside of Travis, the best receiver they had. Will Shepard, who transferred in from Vanderbilt, he was really good. He's gonna make an NFL team very happy. And then Jimmy Horn. So they lost 4 guys who will probably all be drafted or at least get an opportunity to play in the NFL at some point. So you're losing a lot, and the rest of the room is young and inexperienced. And so Sincere Brown, he's a senior, like we talked about, 6'5", and I think whatever that light switch was, it took him a little bit to turn on to figure it out because his stat line goes as follows: 2020, 1 catch for 19 yards, 0 and 21, 0 and 22, transfers to Campbell and just figures it out. And he's a freak athlete. I think Colorado has always been really good at getting the ball to their playmakers in space and letting them do their thing. And like you said earlier, he's got that rare size and speed for a 6'5" guy. Usually 6'5" guys are like, okay, Sincere's over there, I'm just going to throw it up. He'll probably come down with it, and then we'll take our 20, 25 yards. No, he is a guy that they were throwing bubble screens to, screens over the middle to. Like, he does everything. And I think he's going to be, if not the main guy, he will be one of the main guys.
I think Sincere Brown has NFL potential if he's focused.
Mm-hmm.
God only blesses so many people with that kind of lateral cutting ability that's over 6 foot, let alone 6'4", 6'5".
Yeah.
I mean, you can't teach that. There's one Randy Moss, and there will only be one Randy Moss.
Right.
But he's built in that mold.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of scary. So with that being stated, when we come back, we're going to talk about some more of the players they need, but also some departures. What are the concerns? What are the positions? Could Colorado lose somebody, and it could cause a big problem? That is next here on the Portal Podcast. Get the supplies you need from the site made for the skilled trades, Supply House. Whether you're into plumbing, HVAC, or electrical work, Supply House is the reliable way to order products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Plus, with a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from 400-plus top brands, you'll find exactly what you need, delivered fast from coast to coast. Need help with an order? Supply House offers expert support and industry-leading service, so you'll always talk to a real person. And for trade pros looking for an extra edge, their free Trade Master program offers exclusive perks like a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Thousands of skilled professionals are already taking advantage. Now it's your turn. Join the Trade Master program today at supplyhouse.com/TM and start ordering plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies with just a few clicks. Plus, use promo code SH5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. Kevin, thank you once again for stopping in. This is Kevin Borba from Locked On Buffs. I appreciate that, and I also appreciate that you have a lot of help for me with the most difficult team in the country with the portal, because we don't know who's coming and going sometimes. The research I had to do for this show was a little more than most. I'm just going to leave it at that.
Yeah.
Which players have they lost so far that you're like, okay, this was not good. They really got to double down at this spot. Where do they need help?
Yeah, I think running back Isaiah Gustave was a big loss in the sense of Colorado plans to run the ball this year. Please don't faint, Brian. They did say they're going to run the ball.
I said they could be a top 50 team if they wanted with their O-line improving.
Right, and they're making sure the O-line improves. And I think they also know when you lose, we'll call Shedeur a projected first-round pick. I don't know where he's going to go. His draft stock is as confusing as their transfer portal saga.
Oh, wow. It is.
But
it
is, right? And so, but they know that they don't have him, right? He's a legend of Colorado, whether people want to admit it or not. He's one of the best statistical quarterbacks we've seen in college football history. Super accurate. And although he was sacked 94 times in 2 years, he covered a lot of flaws, which is kind of shocking to say, but he covered a lot of flaws for that offense. So they bring in Marshall Faulk, and the plan is to run the ball. And Isaiah Gustave was the leading rusher last year. Granted, he had like 300 yards, so not a ton of production, but it was like he had a lot of promise. And Deion Sanders called out Virginia, the University of Virginia Cavaliers, for tampering, and all of a sudden Isaiah Gustave ends up at Virginia. So you guys could put 2 and 2 together there. He was a big loss, I think. And then Cash Cleveland, who you talked about as well, a walk-on who ended up turning into an All-American center. I would have liked to see Cash stay, but I also know that Colorado is targeting the offensive line heavily, and I don't think anyone across that offensive line outside of Jordan Seaton got the nod of like, hey, you're going to start. And so maybe he got an opportunity to get paid or be on scholarship somewhere else, and I don't fault him for taking that, but I would have liked to see those two guys return to Boulder.
How many O-line do you think they still need? 2, 3?
Let me run you down the wish list Coach Prime gave after the spring game. So it was 2 centers, an offensive tackle, and an offensive guard. So we'll go 4.
Oh, wow. That dude. Spring, look, I'll just make this statement again. It seems like I say it every time I do a portal podcast. O-line is the rare spot.
Yeah.
Overall, like if you wanted to say a position, you kind of ran it across from tackle to center. D tackle would be close, but it's, oh boy, I'm concerned about that, to say the least.
I think they've brought in good pieces. I honestly think they just want to have so much depth where it's like, if this doesn't work, we'll have another rotation, right? Like,
and that's the way they should look at it. Absolutely.
Right. Like, think of hockey, right? And this is like a bad thing for your offensive line, but if this line just isn't working, we're bringing out 4 new guys. We're bringing out 5 new guys, right? And I think Colorado has been burned in the past 2 years now of like, we think we have a line, and then Shedeur Sanders is getting sacked 40 times a year, right? That can't happen again because you don't have Shedeur Sanders, you don't have Travis Hunter, and so this offensive line needs to be able to initiate a forward push in the run game, so that way it opens up everything else. And so I don't think it hurts to bring in as many as possible. As long as you could keep everyone, then it's a great problem to have if you have too many playable linemen, right?
Yeah, I would agree. So let me ask you a question. Xavier Hill has transferred from Memphis. Yeah. I think he's outstanding. I believe his pass protection grade was like 86 point something, according to PFF.
Yeah.
Experienced kid that started out at LSU before he was an all-conference player, not once but twice for Memphis at the G5 level. Is he going to play guard or tackle, or has that been discussed? Because he's played both during his college career thus far.
I think he plays guard. Realistically, I think it was his high school coach that said expect him to play guard, and he was listed. It was kind of funny. There was a report with an interview from his high school coach. He's like, he's a guard. He can play tackle, but he's a guard. And all of a sudden, all the recruiting sites, like if you look at 24/7 right now, he's listed as an interior offensive lineman now, before being initially listed as a guard or as a tackle. So I think he plays inside. I don't think putting him next to Jordan Seaton, I mean, who says no to that, right? You have
That's an option right there, brother.
An All-American left tackle, a freshman All-American left tackle, and then a guy who's an all-conference caliber player on one side of the ball. That you at least can run the ball that way, right? So I think he plays inside, and I think they are finding other right tackle solutions.
Okay, so they need – what's the biggest spot? Is it right tackle that's the biggest need on the offensive line? Is that accurate?
I would say so. Yeah, I think they've brought in quite a few. They took a flyer on a handful of guys. Like they have Xylon Chrysler from Illinois, who is an interior lineman. Mana Tamani, interior offensive lineman from Ole Miss. They've got the center from Louisiana Tech, Xavier McGill. And their only right tackle guy that I think is at least somewhat proven is Aki. I always butcher his last name, so I just call him Aki Oji, the Texas A&M transfer. And so I think it doesn't hurt to have more options there because none of the linemen from last year should be starting outside of Seton. That's just how it should be.
I wonder if Hill ends up having to start at least a couple of games at tackle, which having a swing player to do that is better than not having a guy that's ever played it.
Right. I think it's a good problem to have. Someone who's a veteran who could do a little bit of everything and figure out the inside and still use him.
Okay, so we've talked about O-line, now the other side. How many D linemen do you think they need? This is the spot where I've always been a little nervous with the Buffaloes.
Yeah, I think it doesn't hurt to bring in a couple more defensive tackles. They took a flyer on Jaheim Otis, who was at one point the number one player in the portal. And
he's a talented player.
I think they have a lot of expectations for him. He caught a little stray during a mid-spring game interview from the defensive coordinator. He's talking to Holly Rowe, and he's like, Jaheim didn't make a play there. Would have liked to see that. So clearly they like him a lot if they're going to call him out on national television like that. They took Gabriel Lightfoot from Fresno State. But I don't think it hurts, right? I think you need, especially in this modern era of college football, everyone is geared towards the playoff. Everyone is geared towards playing an extra 3 to 4 games, right? And if you don't have depth for an extra 3 to 4 games, you will get exposed in the playoff or even late in the season, right? Colorado's season last year, they were out physical by Kansas, who was at the time fighting for bowl eligibility, and that dashed their Big 12 playoff hopes or the Big 12 championship hopes and their college football playoff hopes because they lost, and that tiebreaker thing really messed them up, and they gave up a Devin Neal legacy game. So I think 1 or 2 more defensive tackles to pair with Jaheim Otis would not hurt.
They're hard to find, brother. Chances are you probably got to take an inexperienced guy. But let's go back to something.
Yeah. Who's
the staff that always finds the FCS kid? The Buffaloes.
Yep.
I don't understand it, and I would literally like to have a conversation with Colorado's back office staff more than I would Deion about that because they're the ones grinding on it. He just hires them. Mm-hmm. But, I mean, he has to get final approval and all, but that's pretty impressive what they got going on.
Right.
Before I forget, you and I discussed this before the show. There's rumor that Hakeem Williams from Florida State could end up at Colorado.
Yeah.
What's the latest on that? I just want to bring that up.
Yeah, he took a visit to Boulder. It's an interesting situation because I'll sort of bring back his little beef with Travis Hunter. Back in the day when Travis Hunter was, I think, in the portal, Hakeem was quoted saying, he was asked about his Florida State pledge, and he goes, "Ain't no Travis Hunter over here. We're locked in. Time to work." And so that led, of course, to Travis Hunter going, "Your coach is literally asking me to come play for him." So there was that whole thing. And now he's in Boulder, took a visit to Boulder. We talked about him off air. Freak athlete, right? 5-star guy. And we talked about the wide receiver room, which I think needs a little more zhuzh, if you will. And I think, assuming he stays healthy and he has his head on right, I don't think it hurts to have a guy with that much talent in the room to help replace Travis Hunter. And obviously, there's a lot of things that are moving and shaking, but of the former 5-stars in the portal, him, Jonte Cook, I think I trust him a little bit more, right?
Jonte, yeah. Talent, but we got questions.
Yeah.
That's fair. When we come back, we're going to talk about the quarterback position at Colorado, which surprisingly doesn't have 1 but 2 options. And can the Buffaloes make a run at the Big 12 title? That is next here on the Portal Podcast. There's nothing like the atmosphere of an NBA playoff game. Every bucket, every defensive stop, every moment feels huge. It's electric in the arena, and with Game Time, you can be a part of it without the stress of last-minute ticket hunting. Game Time makes it fast and easy to get playoff tickets, even when demand is sky high. Prices on the app actually go down as tip-off grows closer. And their last-minute ticket deals can make you save up to 60%. Here's a great point about Game Time. It's not just the basketball games either. It could be a concert. It could be a play. It could be going to the movie theater. And again, you can save up to 60%. Plus, there's all-in ticket pricing, so you don't get any surprises at the end when you pay. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. The Buffaloes have some interesting quarterback situation. I can't leave without at least getting your opinion now that spring is kind of at the end. They bring in Kaiden Salter. He's a guy that has a lot of talent. He did well throughout his career at Liberty. But now you're going to Colorado, and they bring in Juju Lewis, a 5-star from Carrollton High School in Georgia. I know Juju a little bit from seeing him in a couple of E11s. Like, this is a kid that's had a rep since he was like 7th grade. He was a little different. Where is the quarterback position, and what do you expect this year from the Buffaloes? Because as we alluded to earlier, they're going to run it more, and Salter is a true dual threat.
Yeah, we saw them both for the first time, at least for the public, during the spring game. I thought the offense moved better with Kaiden Salter. Julian Lewis did get a touchdown, and I think Salter had a pass deflected that ended up turning into an interception. But the offense just moves with Salter. Juju, for me, for the most part, looked like a 17-year-old kid, which it's not a knock on him, right? He should be going to junior prom. He should be figuring out like algebra 2 or whatever math class they're taking. And instead, he's figuring out a college offense, which is kind of an NFL offense with Pat Shurmur. And I just think that in order to really maximize what you have in Kaiden Salter, you have to at least give him the starting role. Not give him, but he should be the starter at first. And then if it doesn't work out, you go to Juju, right? And I think a lot of people get upset with that take because everyone wants the shiny 5-star kid. But I'll just throw out a few names. Trevor Lawrence, DJ Lagway, Arch Manning, Julian Sayin, right? Those are all 5-star guys. Trevor Lawrence was like viewed as, and I think people forget this, Trevor Lawrence was like viewed as the next coming, and he didn't start right away, right? I think there's value in not throwing out a 5-star freshman right away, because then if you do and it doesn't go well, you have a situation like, say, Dylan Raiola, where it's like, okay, is this guy any good? You have a situation where I don't think Graham Mertz was a 4 or a 5-star, but he was a highly ranked recruit for Wisconsin, where it's like, oh, this guy's kind of a bust now. And it's like nobody wants him anymore, right? So I think you have to give these guys, Bryce Young, another guy who sat behind someone, give him some opportunity to learn. And I think Kaiden Salter, to me, looked a little bit more polished, as he should.
Do you think they will take the risk and run him consistently? Now, you can call RPOs, but you can also tap him on the shoulder and say, unless this sucker's wide open, you slide. You know, are they going to be aggressive with him? Because he's an athlete. Like he can
I think
go.
you have to. I think you have to be. They didn't show much in the spring game, but
Right.
they did go. They did say that there's 2 different offenses, really. Like it's like the Kaiden offense and it's the Julian offense. So I think that's kind of an indicator where there's going to be some design runs for Kaiden Salter, and I think that's what made him special, right? I think part of the reason we didn't see Kaiden Salter light it up in the spring game per se is because in a spring game, a quarterback can't be touched. So the quarterbacks have instructions to say, or they have instructions to pretty much stay in the pocket, and they can move around a little bit, but you're not running for 30 yards in a spring game, because it's like as soon as you get past the line of scrimmage, someone touches your shoulder, you're down. So I think you have to utilize him in that way. And I think we've seen it around the country. Teams who can use a running quarterback. Will Howard wasn't used a lot as a runner, but Ohio State used his legs quite a bit. Riley Leonard, Notre Dame, they used his legs. Jalen Milroe, his legs were his saving grace, I think, for a lot of his struggles last year. And even you look at a guy like Arch Manning, who found his way onto the field as a running quarterback. So you have to be able to use the legs, and I think Colorado will do that.
I agree, and I think that it'll be interesting if he gets banged up what Juju can do, because you're right, Kevin. For those that don't know, Juju didn't just enroll a year early. He enrolled a year and a half early. I've never seen a guy do that.
Yeah.
Is he mentally and physically ready?
I will say he has a great arm. We saw the arm, and like I never questioned his arm, but it was like just in the back of your head, it's like, oh, can this guy do it against college age men, if you will? Because some of these guys are like 25 these days. And he did. He made some really good throws, and he has a lot of zip on the ball. And then there were some moments where the offensive line sort of collapsed and he looked a little frazzled, but The arm talent is there. It's just a matter of reps and comfortability.
Yeah, I think that he'll be good in time. I assume that Juju will take over in 2026 for the Colorado Buffaloes, but
Yeah.
it would do him some good to kind of sit back just a little bit.
Hmm.
Now, back to my original point. I have stated multiple times on the Portal Podcast that I think right now the Buffaloes are the best bet to end up winning the Big 12. Now, that's not a huge statement because the Big 12 is so hard to predict.
Mm-hmm.
But I think, as you've already brought up, they're after several guys. They know they're playing in the portal. They've got some pretty good talent already.
Yeah.
What do you think? Is the Big 12 that open this year again? Because for those who don't remember, Arizona State was picked 16th last year by the media and won the league.
Yeah.
That's as bad as that is so random. I don't know if that'll ever happen again. From last to first. But congrats to Arizona State on that, by the way. That was pretty impressive.
Mm-hmm.
Where is it that you feel like? Was Colorado, am I way off on this? Or are they a top 5 Big 12 team? Like, where are you at?
I would put them in the top 5, 6-ish. I think ask me again in 2 weeks, right? When the portal's done.
I was projecting that part.
Yeah.
That's just my guess.
I assume like if they're getting some of the guys that they're linked to, like they're just now starting to get in on BYU wide receiver, Keelan Marion. Like if they get him, the offense sort of changes another dynamic, goes up another notch. And I think assuming we'll for S&Gs, Colorado's transfer class ranks as the 25th class in the portal. We'll say for S&Gs it finishes 15th or better. I think Colorado is easily one of the top 5 teams in the Big 12. And I think assuming they don't stumble at the end of the year like they did last year with a late Kansas loss, I don't see why they can't contend for a Big 12 title, right? You have cohesiveness. This is the first time of the Deion Sanders era where both coordinators are back. So that's cool. Pat Shurmur will be back calling plays. Robert Livingston, who the Saints came after him really hard. They wanted him to be their defensive coordinator. He's back. And so you have some cohesion at coaching, on the coaching staff, and a lot of talent. I think they have one of the more talented rosters. And I do think, and this is where people sort of scratch their heads when I say this, but this roster from an overall perspective feels more balanced than last year. Whereas last year was like, we have a handful of stars who are going to drag everyone else along, where I think this year it's more balanced. And so I think Colorado should have a chance to contend.
I agree with that. And I think the Big 12 will be better.
Mm-hmm.
I think that if you look at it, you got Levitt back at Arizona State. You got a good quarterback at TCU, by the way. Tennessee's trying to get him. That's another story. At one point, Oklahoma was trying to steal Baylor's quarterback. Yeah. The league is trending up. I think it will be another wild year. Oklahoma State won't be as bad as they were. Kansas State and Iowa State will be good. It will be absolutely bonkers, but it's a lot of fun. I know the Big 12 isn't dominant, but every week, man, there's a storyline.
One thing, like if I had to place a bet on like the likelihood of something happening, I would put all my money on the Big 12 going into the final 2 weeks of the season with about 7 teams with a mathematic chance of making it to the Big 12 championship. Because I just feel like that's sort of how it rolls with the Big 12.
I don't think Kevin is wrong on that one, folks, because it's been proven so far. And last year was the absolute ultimate sign of that. But Kevin, I appreciate you coming on the show, brother. Can you tell everybody where they can find your work?
Yeah, I'm over at Locked On Buffs. We're going to have some really cool interviews coming up. I'm going to have one of Colorado's spring portal stars, if you will, on my show. We're going to have some former players talk about the jersey retirement situation. It's going to be fun. So come check me out on Locked On Buffs.
Yeah, I appreciate that. You can find everything here on the Portal Podcast on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your pods. Please give us a 5-star review on Apple, YouTube, wherever. Take care. We will see you again soon on the Portal Podcast.